Hi everyone, welcome to this exciting session by Simplilearn. Today, we have a really interesting topic for you. In this video, we'll be discussing about the hypothesis testing. We'll start by talking about the hypothesis testing and how a research question can help you come with a good hypothesis. Then, we'll look at the hypothesis and the criteria for developing a good hypothesis. Following that, we'll look at the null hypothesis concept, test statistics, and understand it with the help of an example. Finally, we'll conclude this video by briefing you about the significance level. So, let's get started. What is hypothesis testing? Hypothesis testing or significance testing is a method for testing a claim or hypothesis about a parameter in a population using data measured in a sample. The purpose of the hypothesis testing is to check if there is enough statistical evidence in favor of a hypothesis that we have claimed. Now we'll move on to the research question. A research problem is a broad issue that you would like to address through your research. It identifies a difficult doubt or area of concern in the theory or in practice that requires thought and investigation. Research objectives are clear statements of what you aim to achieve through your research. There are specific actions that you will take and act as a milestone that will help you complete your research. A research question is a specific concern that you will answer through your research. It is derived from a research problem but is based on a study design. When you narrow down on a research problem to a specific idea that points towards a feasible way to investigate or address the research problems, you will get a research question. Now, what you should really take care of is there is a slight difference between a research question and a hypothesis. Hypothesis makes prediction about an experimental outcome, whereas research question does not. Let's understand with the help of an example. Suppose your research question is how many hours per day a student spends on a gaming and you want the answer for that. Another research question may be, do the college students with more study hours can achieve the higher GPA than the students who do not put in more hours for study? These questions can be answered by framing a hypothesis. So let's understand what a hypothesis is. A hypothesis is a tentative statement about the relationship between two or more variables. It is a specific, testable predictions about what you expect to happen in a study. The hypothesis is a prediction, but it involves more than a guess. Most of the time, a hypothesis begins with a question which is then explored through a background research. Hypothesis translates a research question into a prediction of expected outcomes. Unless you are creating an exploratory study, a hypothesis should always explain what you expect to happen. So, as in the previous slide, we have framed a question that how many hours per student spend on a gaming. Relating to this question, we can create a hypothesis that students who spend more time on gaming are socially alienated. So there are some good criteria for a good hypothesis. Let's discuss what are those. A hypothesis should be compatible with the current knowledge in the area and it should follow the logical consistency. It should not be inconsistent in places. A good hypothesis must be stated briefly and clearly, and it should be testable. Now we'll understand what a null hypothesis and alternative hypothesis is. The null hypothesis is the assumption that the event will not occur. A null hypothesis has no bearing on the study's outcome unless it is rejected. H0 is a symbol for null hypothesis. The alternative hypothesis or a research hypothesis is the logical opposite of the null hypothesis. The acceptance of the alternative hypothesis follows the rejection of the null hypothesis. Let's understand the null hypothesis with the help of an example. Suppose you have a research hypothesis that the duration of an advertisement on the TV channels is positively related to the sales of the product. The more the duration, the more the sales of that product. So, the null hypothesis of this assumption would be that the duration of the advertisement on the TV channels are not related to the sales of the product. They are not related at all. Now we'll move on to the test statistics that are frequently discussed when creating hypothesis testing. The test statistics is a number calculated from the statistical test of a hypothesis. It shows how closely your observed data matches the distribution expected under the null hypothesis of that statistical test. The distribution of the data is how often each observation occurs and can be described by its central tendency and variation around the central tendencies. The test statistics summarizes your observed data into a single number using the central tendency, variation, sample size, and the other number of predictable variables in your statistical model. There are broadly three types of statistical tests. Different statistical tests have slightly different ways of calculating these test statistics, but the underlying hypothesis and interpretation of the test statistics stay the same. So the first one is a t-test. A t-test is a statistical test that is used to compare the means of two groups. It is often used in hypothesis testing to determine whether a process or treatment actually has an effect on the population of interest or whether the two groups are different from one another. The null hypothesis is that the true difference between these group means is zero, and the alternative hypothesis is that the true difference is different from zero. Now let's move on to z-test. Z-tests are a statistical way of testing a hypothesis when either we know the population variance or we don't know the population variance but our sample size is greater than 30. We perform the Z-test when we want to compare a sample mean with the population mean. The next is an F-test. The F-test or the F-statistics is simply a ratio of two variances. Variances is a measure of dispersion or how far the data are scattered from the mean. Larger values represent the greater dispersion. Despite being a ratio of variances, you can use the F-test in a wide variety of situations. F-test can assess the equality of variances. However, by changing the variances that are included in the ratio, the F-test became a very flexible test. Now that we have discussed all the theories related to the hypothesis testing, let's take an example to understand them more clearly. Consider a study on a group of students where the students receive a special learning aid through the online videos on science. It is hypothesized that after viewing these online videos, the group of students score better than the one who have not seen the videos. So in this case, a research hypothesis will be students who have received the special science learning videos will score higher in the science competency test. And its null hypothesis will be the special science learning videos make no impact on the scores of the students. Now we will discuss what a significance level is. Level of significance or significance level refers to a criterion of judgment upon which a decision is made regarding the value stated in the null hypothesis. This criteria is based on the probability of obtaining a statistic measured in a sample if the values stated in null hypothesis were true. Generally, the criterion of the level of significance is typically set at 5% or 0.05. This value of significance level can also be taken as 1% or 10% depending upon your requirement. If the result obtained from the study indicates a probability lower than the significance level, so in this case, a researcher can reject a null hypothesis. Otherwise, if the result of the study indicates a probability higher than the significance level, the researcher can support the null hypothesis. With that, we have come to the end of this video on hypothesis testing. I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, then please put them in the comment sections. Also, if you liked the video, then please subscribe to the Simplilearn channel and hit the bell icon to never miss an update. Thank you for watching and keep learning.
Hi there, if you like this video, subscribe to the Simplilearn YouTube channel and click here to watch similar videos. To nerd up and get certified, click here.